My name is Nicole, and at 34, I never expected to be sitting in my parents' living room in Tacoma, feeling like I was in a hostile takeover rather than a family catch-up. It wasn't a family gathering. It was an ambush. The air was thick, charged with the weight of something rehearsed. Then my father dropped it casual as if he were commenting on the weather. "We used what your grandmother left you to cover your brother's debts." The words landed like a sentence being passed. Years of watching their favoritism had taught me how to keep my face calm, but inside the map of their scheme lit up in perfect detail. They thought I'd stay quiet. What they didn't know was that I had already locked down that inheritance, and with one move they'd walked straight into their own trap. Before I get to my story, I want to know what time and what city you are listening in. I'm happy to know how far my story has spread. My grandmother Karen was the one person who saw me for who I was not, just as the reliable fix for family problems. She wasn't just family, she was my guide, the voice that cut through the noise of my parents' endless excuses for my brother. From my earliest memories in Spokane, where we'd hike the trails near the mountains, Karen made every outing a lesson in self-reliance. While other kids played games, I sat with her on a bench overlooking the river listening as she broke down life's basics with simple stories from her own tough upbringing during the Depression era. She'd pull out a sandwich from her bag and divide it carefully. "This part is for needs. Nicole, this covers food and shelter. This slice is for saving building for the future, and this small bit, that's for wants, but only after the rest is secure." It wasn't preachy. It was practical, the kind of wisdom that stuck because she lived it. By age 8, I was tracking my allowance in a notebook she gave me, dividing it just like that sandwich. Karen never pushed, just asked questions that made me think like, "What happens if you spend it all now?" Those talks built my foundation, turning me into someone who planned ahead while my family chased the moment. My brother Justin, 3 years younger, approached life like it owed him a shortcut. He'd blow through his pocket money on video games or snacks before the weekend even started, then flash that grin at our parents until they caved. It wasn't occasional, it was routine. Our parents, Dad Robert and Mom Donna, enabled it every time. If Justin forgot to save for a school field trip to the Seattle Aquarium, they'd pull from their wallet without a second thought. But when I needed something, it was always, "Earn it yourself, Nicole. You're the responsible one." The contrast defined us. At 14, I started babysitting neighbors in Tacoma to build my savings, reviewing my earnings with Karen during our weekend visits. She'd nod approvingly, saying, "You're planting seeds for a strong tree." Justin, meanwhile, got handed extras for potential he never quite chased. One incident burned into me. I was 16, saving for months to buy a used bike for commuting to my part-time job at a local coffee shop. The day I hit my goal, Justin wrecked his skateboard trying some stunt in the driveway, damaging the neighbor's fence. Instead of making him fix it, my parents dipped into my bike fund, promising, "We'll pay you back soon, family comes first." They never did. I picked up extra shifts to make up the difference biking miles on an old clunker until I could afford better. Karen heard about it later and pulled me aside during a hike. "Don't let their choices define yours. Protect what you build." That pattern didn't fade as we grew older. I left for college in Seattle on a scholarship, working nights at a bookstore to cover the gaps. Justin picked an expensive art school in Portland, flunked classes, and got rescued each semester by our parents wiring money. I'd visit home every few months, driving the rainy highways from Seattle to Tacoma, sitting through dinners where they'd rave about Justin's creative ventures, even as they failed one after another. I'd bite my tongue when they asked me to review his latest business plan, knowing it was code for bailing him out again. Karen remained my anchor. During her visits to my small apartment in Seattle, we'd talk over coffee and she'd spot the strain. Family ties are strong, but they can strangle if you let them, she'd say, encouraging me to draw lines without guilt. When she got diagnosed with late-stage cancer in early 2024, it shattered me. I took leave from work to drive down weekly handling her appointments and late-night talks about her life. Justin showed up sporadically twice in those final months, each time pitching some art project that needed seed funding. Karen refused gently, but I saw the disappointment in her eyes. She confided in me during one quiet afternoon in her Spokane home surrounded by old photos of the mountains. "I've watched how they treat you two. It's not fair, and I won't let my hard work feed that cycle." The grief after her passing hit hard waves of it crashing during everyday moments, like spotting her favorite tea at the grocery store in Seattle. Karen had hinted she'd left me something substantial, her property and savings from years of careful investing, but we never dwelled on details. Our bond was about the lessons, not the money. By then, I'd built a solid career advising clients on financial plans, owning a modest condo overlooking Puget Sound, with savings that let me travel occasionally. I wasn't wealthy, but stable, something Karen would have been proud of. 3 weeks after the funeral, Dad's text came. "Family meeting Friday at 6. Urgent matters." The tone was off too formal for our usual chaotic barbecues or holiday calls. Driving the 2 hours from Seattle to Tacoma that evening, rain pounding the windshield, I replayed memories of Karen's warnings. Justin's car was already there, a flashy SUV that screamed expense, despite his constant struggles. Mom opened the door with a forced smile, her hug quick and tense. "Come in, honey. Everyone's waiting." Dad sat rigid in his armchair, no usual warmth, while Justin scrolled his phone, barely glancing up. The setup felt staged, like a boardroom takedown. As we settled, Mom fidgeted with a platter of snacks, far fancier than normal, a telltale sign she was softening a blow. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's cut to it. Your grandmother left you her property and assets. Given Justin's situation, we've decided to use it to clear his debts." The words hung there, blunt and entitled, as if my inheritance was communal property. Justin smirked slightly, like he'd won already. Mom chimed in. "You're doing so well, Nicole. You don't need it like he does." I kept composed, years of client crises teaching me to gather facts first. "How much debt are we talking?" Dad replied flatly. "Around $200,000 from some bad investments." Knowing Karen's estate, that was most of it. They'd even contacted her lawyer behind my back, assuming I'd fold. But as they pressed, memories of those Spokane hikes with Karen flooded back her warnings about protecting what I earned. The devil was in the details they were hiding, and I was about to expose it all. Those early lessons from Grandma Karen carried me through the rough patches as I stepped into adulthood. After high school, I headed to the University of Washington in Seattle on a partial scholarship majoring in finance, while juggling 2 jobs, one at a campus library and another waitressing weekends at a downtown cafe. The late nights studying and early shifts built my discipline, but they also highlighted the gap with Justin. He chose a private college in Olympia for graphic design, partying through semesters and racking up incompletes. Each time he'd call home in a panic, Dad and Mom would rearrange their budget to cover his tuition hikes or emergency fees. I'd hear about it during my monthly drives back to Tacoma, pulling into the driveway exhausted only to sit through updates on Justin's promising portfolio that never materialized. Meanwhile, my achievements got a quick nod. "That's great. Nicole, keep it up." By 22, I graduated with honors and landed an entry-level analyst role at a Seattle firm, climbing the ladder through certifications and long hours. Justin dropped out after 3 years bouncing between freelance gigs that fizzled fast, always with some excuse like, "The market's tough for artists." The favoritism stung more as the years piled on. At 25, I saved enough for a down payment on a one-bedroom condo in Seattle's Belltown neighborhood with views of the ferries crossing Elliott Bay. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine proof of the planning Grandma had drilled in. Justin, by then living back in Tacoma rent-free, crashed his car during a late-night drive and needed bail for repairs. Instead of holding him accountable, my parents refinanced their house to help, then casually asked if I could chip in for his insurance. I refused, politely citing my own bills, but the guilt trip followed. "He's your brother. Nicole family supports each other." "Oh," Grandma Karen during our phone calls would cut through it. "Supporting doesn't mean enabling. You've earned your stability guard it." I'd visit her in Spokane every other month, driving the scenic route through the Cascades, where we'd discuss my career moves over her homemade stew. She reviewed my investment statements with sharp eyes, suggesting tweaks that grew my portfolio steadily. Justin rarely called her except when he needed advice that turned into requests for cash. By my late 20s, the dynamic had solidified into something toxic. I advanced to senior advisor at my firm, helping clients navigate market dips and retirement plans. Justin launched a string of failed ventures, a graphic design startup that tanked due to poor management, then a photography side hustle buried in equipment costs he couldn't repay. Each flop brought calls from Mom. "He's going through a rough patch. Could you look at his resume?" I'd do it once or twice, but the pattern wore thin. Grandma saw it all. "Your parents mean well, but they're blind to how it drains you," she'd say during our walks along the Spokane River. When her health declined in spring 2024, starting with fatigue that tests revealed as stage 4 lung cancer, everything shifted. I rearranged my schedule to drive out weekly, coordinating her chemo sessions and stocking her fridge with easy meals. The 6 months that followed blurred into hospital waits and quiet evenings reading her favorite mystery novels aloud. Justin visited 3 times, each brief ending with pitches for investment in his next idea, like a digital art gallery app. Grandma turned him down firmly. "Use what you have first, Justin." But privately to me, as we sat on her porch, watching the sunset over the hills, she'd whisper concerns. "I worry what happens after I'm gone. They've always favored him, and it'll fall on you." In those final weeks, as her strength faded, Grandma pulled me close during a hospital stay. "Nicole, call Anthony Ford, my lawyer. His number's in my address book." I dialed right there, putting him on speaker. "Karen, how are you holding up?" he asked warmly. "Like I'm fading, Anthony, but my mind's sharp. I need changes to my estate with Nicole here as witness." I was stunned. We'd never discussed her will in detail. Anthony, professional yet kind, greeted me. "Your grandmother speaks highly of you. Sorry it's under these circumstances." Grandma got straight to business. "Transfer everything the house investment savings into an irrevocable trust for Nicole alone. I don't trust Robert and Donna to honor my wishes." The bluntness hit hard. "Grandma, Dad, and Mom wouldn't—" She squeezed my hand. "I love them, but I know their blind spot for Justin. They've asked me for money to bail him out for years. This protects what I've built." Anthony confirmed, "We can set it up quickly with provisions to avoid challenges." Over the next days, as Grandma rested between treatments, I worked with him via calls and visits to her Spokane home. We moved her assets valued around $200,000 in property and cash into the trust designed with strict terms for my housing, education if needed, and future security, but no loans to family without Anthony's approval as co-trustee. The secrecy weighed on me at first, but Grandma shared stories during our talks, like Dad pressing her for funds after Justin's first business flop, or Mom guilting her over holiday dinners. "If Justin truly changes, you can decide wisely," she said. "This is a shield, not a wall." Signing the final papers in her hospital room brought her peace. Now I can rest without worry. We kept it quiet. As far as my parents knew, her original will stood leaving most to me with small shares for them and Justin. When she passed 2 months later, the loss crushed me. I'd break down driving past Spokane signs on the highway back to Seattle. At the funeral in Tacoma, I noticed Dad chatting intently with a probate lawyer glancing my way. In the weeks after, they mentioned paperwork vaguely, while Justin suddenly texted more asking about my plans. Anthony kept me updated. Your father's inquired about timelines. The trust is secure, bypassing probate entirely. The minor assets outside it went through normal channels to maintain the illusion. Honoring Grandma's foresight became my quiet resolve, especially as hints of their scheme emerged. But nothing prepared me for how far they'd go until that family meeting text arrived, forcing the confrontation I dreaded yet anticipated. The drive from Seattle to my parents' house in Tacoma that Friday evening felt like heading into a storm. Rain battered my windshield, mirroring the unease twisting in my gut. Dad's text about an urgent family meeting echoed in my head, its formal tone clashing with our usual casual texts about barbecues or game nights. Grandma Karen's warning from her hospital bed about my parents' blind spot for Justin kept surfacing as I navigated the slick highway. By the time I pulled into their driveway, Justin's gleaming black SUV was parked out front, a stark contrast to my practical hatchback. For someone supposedly drowning in debt, he sure had a knack for flashy purchases. I grabbed the coffee I'd brought as a peace offering and steeled myself stepping into the house where Mom greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nicole, you're here good," she said, her voice tight as she ushered me inside. The living room smelled of her signature pot roast, a dish she only made when she wanted something or needed to smooth over bad news. Dad sat in his recliner posture, rigid, like he was about to negotiate a deal not talk to his daughter. Justin lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone, barely muttering a "Hey sis," without looking up. I caught a glint of a new smartwatch on his wrist, easily $1,000, my advisor brain calculated. Mom bustled in with a tray of appetizers fancier than our usual chips, and dipped her hands fidgeting as she set it down. The tension was suffocating, like everyone was reading from a script I hadn't been given. We made awkward small talk about Tacoma traffic and the Seahawks' latest game, but their glances at each other screamed rehearsal. Finally, Dad cleared his throat, folding his hands like he was addressing a boardroom. "Nicole, we need to discuss something important about your grandmother's estate." "Yeah." My pulse quickened, but I kept my face neutral, nodding for him to continue. He leaned forward, voice measured. "Given Justin's financial situation, we've decided to use the property and assets she left you to clear his debts around $200,000 from some bad investments." The words landed like a sucker punch delivered, as if he were suggesting we split a dinner bill. Mom jumped in, her tone overly sweet. "You're doing so well with your career and condo, honey. Justin needs this more than you do right now." Justin finally looked up, smirking slightly, like he assumed I'd roll over. I forced a calm smile, years of handling panicked clients kicking in. "That's a big number. Can you break down what these debts are?" Dad hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "Mostly business loans from his last project, a digital art platform that hit some snags." The vagueness raised red flags. Justin shifted, muttering, "Just some startup costs and market issues, no big deal." I pressed further, keeping my tone light. "What kind of startup costs add up to $200,000? Mom's smile faltered, and she busied herself rearranging napkins. Dad cut in. "The details aren't the point, Nicole. It's about helping family." The dodge confirmed they were hiding something. I excused myself to grab a glass of water, my mind racing. In the kitchen, I noticed Mom's laptop open on the counter, a tab visible with an email titled Urgent Justin Payment Plan. Glancing toward the living room to ensure they were still talking, I clicked it open. It was from a creditor outlining missed payments on a luxury condo lease in Seattle's Capitol Hill and overdue credit card bills tied to high-end purchases, designer clothes, tech gear, a European trip. Not a word about startup costs. Another email buried deeper was from Justin's old business partner warning my parents about his reckless spending on personal projects that tanked their venture. My heart pounded as I snapped photos with my phone evidence piling up. Back in the living room, they were still deep in their rehearsed pitch. Mom's voice had a pleading edge. "Your grandmother would want us to stick together, Nicole." I nodded slowly, buying time. "Did you already talk to her lawyer about redirecting the assets?" Dad's face tightened, but he answered smoothly. "We spoke to Anthony Ford. He said it's just a matter of signing some papers once probate clears." The lie was bold they'd gone behind my back, assuming I'd cave without checking. I slipped my phone into my pocket, hitting record discreetly, a trick I'd learned from client disputes. "So you're saying the estate's already set to go to Justin's debts?" I asked, feigning confusion. Mom nodded eagerly. "Exactly, honey, it's the right thing for family." Justin leaned forward, impatient. "Look, sis, I just need a clean slate to get back on track. You don't know how stressful this has been." His tone dripped with entitlement, no hint of remorse. The pieces were falling into place, but one detail nagged at me. Grandma had warned me about their pattern, and the emails confirmed it wasn't just failed investments, it was a lifestyle Justin couldn't afford, propped up by my parents' enabling. I pushed harder. "What happens after this? Will Justin get financial counseling to avoid this again?" Dad's face darkened and he snapped. "That's not your concern. He just needs a fresh start." Mom reached for my hand, her eyes glistening with practiced tears. "You're the strong one, Nicole. You can handle this." The manipulation was so blatant it almost made me laugh. Instead, I stood saying I needed a moment to think. As I stepped into the hallway, I overheard Mom whisper to Dad, "Do you think she's buying it?" My resolve hardened. Grandma's lessons about protecting what I built were about to face their biggest test. I wasn't just walking away from this ambush, I was preparing to turn their plan upside down, and they had no idea what was coming. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding as Mom's whispered question, "Do you think she's buying it?" echoed in my ears. The audacity of their plan laid bare by the emails I'd just seen fueled a fire I hadn't felt before. Grandma Karen's voice rang in my head. "Protect what you build." I slid my phone back out, ensuring the recording was still running, and returned to the living room. My parents and Justin sat in their staged positions, Dad in his recliner like a judge, Mom perched nervously on the couch, Justin still glued to his phone, oblivious to the storm about to hit. I took my seat, keeping my expression neutral, a skill honed from years of calming clients during market crashes. "Okay," I said slowly, as if considering their pitch. "I want to understand this better. You're saying you've already decided to use Grandma's assets for Justin's debts." Dad nodded, his tone patronizing, like he was explaining taxes to a teenager. "It's the practical choice, Nicole. Family helps family, and Justin's in a tight spot." Mom leaned in, her voice soft but calculated. "You've always been the strong one, honey. This is just what we do for each other." Justin finally looked up, his smirk gone, replaced by a practiced look of distress. "It's been rough, sis. I just need this one break to get back on my feet." I almost laughed at the performance, knowing his rough life included a luxury condo and a European trip. Instead, I tilted my head, playing along. "So Anthony Ford said it's just paperwork. Did he mention any details about the estate?" Dad's eyes flickered with unease, but he recovered quickly. He said it straightforward. Sign a few forms and the assets go to Justin's creditors when probate clears. Their confidence was their mistake. I leaned back, crossing my arms. That's interesting because I spoke to Anthony Ford myself before Grandma passed. The room froze. Mom's hands stopped fidgeting and Justin's phone slipped slightly in his grip. Dad's jaw tightened, but he pushed forward. Whatever she told you, the will's clear. We're the executors, and we've made the call. I let the silence stretch, then reached into my purse and pulled out the folded letter Grandma had given me in the hospital, its edges worn from rereading. Grandma left me this, I said, holding it up but not handing it over. She warned me you'd try to redirect her estate to Justin. That's why she moved everything her house investment savings into an irrevocable trust 6 months before she died. It's all locked down with me as the sole beneficiary. 0 access for anyone else. Justin's face twisted, his voice rising. That's ridiculous. Grandma had money, her house in Spokane, her accounts. You're making this up. Mom's eyes widened, her voice trembling. Nicole, what are you saying? There's no trust. She wouldn't do that to us. Dad stood his tone sharp. If you're playing games, stop it now. Your brother needs this and we're not negotiating. I stayed calm, slipping the letter back into my purse. I'm not negotiating either. I'm telling you the truth. The will you're banking on is an empty shell. Anthony Ford set up the trust to protect Grandma's assets from exactly this your plan to funnel them to Justin's bad investments. I tapped my phone lightly, the recording still capturing every word. Oh, and Washington's a one-party consent state. I've recorded this entire conversation, your casual decision to misuse my inheritance. Justin's debts from luxury purchases, not startups, and your talks with Anthony behind my back. The air shifted like a guillotine had dropped. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Justin jumped up red-faced, pointing at me. You're recording us. You sneaky, how dare you, Dad's voice cut through low and dangerous. Give me that phone, Nicole. I stepped back unshaken. It's already backed up to the cloud, Dad. Anthony has access, and so does my attorney friend in Seattle. Try anything and it's public. Mom's tears started, but they felt staged, more frustrated than sincere. How could you do this to your own family? We're just trying to help your brother. The hypocrisy hit like a wave. Help him by taking what's mine. You didn't even ask, you decided like my life's work means nothing. Justin scoffed, pacing now. You think you're so perfect with your fancy job and condo. You've never struggled like me. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. Struggled, I worked 2 jobs through college while you partied through art school on Mom and Dad's dime. I saved for years to buy my place while you racked up debts on trips and watches. Don't lecture me about struggle. Dad tried a softer tack, his voice dripping with condescension. Nicole, honey, even if there's a trust, we can work with it. You can still help Justin. It's what Grandma would want. The lie about Grandma's wishes pushed me over the edge. She set up the trust because she knew you'd do this. She told me you've been asking her for money for Justin's flop since I was in college. She wanted her legacy protected, not squandered. Mom's tears stopped cold, her voice hardening. That woman always favored you hoarding her wealth, while we struggled to support Justin's dreams. The mask was off. I stood grabbing my purse. I'm done here. You want to know why Grandma didn't leave anything for Justin? Ask yourselves why you never visited her unless you needed cash. Justin lunged forward, his voice venomous. You're no sister of mine. You're selfish, sitting on money you didn't earn. Dad grabbed his arm, but there was no real effort to stop him. I headed for the door, my voice steady. You made your choice. The trust is ironclad, and I'm honoring Grandma's wishes. Mom's voice cracked behind me. Nicole, don't leave like this. But I kept walking, the weight of their betrayal heavy, but not crushing. As I reached my car, Dad made one last attempt, calling out, "We're not done here." I didn't turn back, but my hand shook as I unlocked the door. Their plan had unraveled, and so had any illusion of family loyalty. What came next would test every lesson Grandma taught me, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. As I drove away from my parents' house in Tacoma, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the streetlights. My hands gripped the wheel, still trembling from the confrontation, but a strange calm settled over me. The weight of their betrayal, Dad's demands, Mom's crocodile tears, Justin's venomous outburst pressed hard, yet it didn't break me. Grandma Karen's lessons etched deep from those Spokane hikes held me steady. Protect what you build. I merged onto the highway toward Seattle, the city's skyline faint in the distance, and realized I wasn't just leaving their house, I was shedding the version of family they'd forced on me. That night alone in my condo, I replayed the recording, every word a confirmation of their scheme to misuse my inheritance. I forwarded it to Anthony Ford, who assured me the trust was untouchable. They'd waste years and thousands fighting it, let them try. His confidence anchored me, but the silence from my phone in the days that followed felt heavier than I'd expected. 2 weeks later, Mom sent a text, "Nicole, your brother's struggling. Can we talk?" No apology, just another plea. I didn't respond. Dad followed up days later. "This isn't over. We're still family." The words stung, but they lacked sincerity, echoing the same manipulation from the meeting. I blocked their numbers, temporarily needing space to process. The loneliness hit hardest in quiet moments, cooking dinner, passing the diner near my office, where I'd once shared coffee with Grandma. I questioned if I'd been too harsh, if there was a way to keep ties without sacrificing myself. But each doubt brought back her voice. Family ties can strangle if you let them. I leaned on therapy sessions with Dr. Victoria, who'd helped me navigate stress before. "Their actions aren't your fault," she said during a virtual call, her voice steady. "You're not abandoning them, you're choosing your peace." Her words cut through the guilt, reminding me that love doesn't mean enabling. 3 months after the confrontation, I got an unexpected call from my cousin Danielle, who'd heard whispers about the fallout through family gossip. We met at a cafe in Seattle's Fremont neighborhood, the smell of espresso grounding our conversation. She shared her own story years ago. My parents had borrowed $5,000 from her for Justin's art school expenses, never repaid. "They guilted me, saying it was for family," she said, stirring her coffee. "I wish I'd set boundaries like you did." Her honesty cracked open a door I thought was closed. I told her about the trust, the meeting, the recording, everything. Her eyes widened, but she nodded. Grandma Karen always saw through their favoritism. "She'd be proud of you." That connection, raw and real, started to fill the void left by my immediate family. Danielle wasn't alone. My Aunt Margaret, Dad's sister, reached out after hearing from Danielle. Over a call, she admitted my parents had pressured her for money years back for Justin's first failed venture. "I cut contact when they wouldn't stop," she said. "You're not the bad guy here." These talks rebuilt a sense of family, not by blood, but by mutual respect. By month 6, the messages from my parents resumed, this time through email, since I'd blocked their phones. Mom's tone was desperate. "Justin's in a bad spot again, new debts from his latest project." "Can't you help?" Dad's email was sterner. "We're your family, Nicole. That trust has more than enough." The same script, no remorse. I sat at my desk, staring at the words, and felt the last thread of hope snap. I replied once, cold and final, "I'm not funding Justin's choices. Please stop asking." Then I blocked their emails, severing the tie for good. The decision wasn't easy. Nights of doubt followed, wondering if I'd regret it. But Dr. Victoria's advice echoed. You can't change their patterns, only your response. Cutting them off wasn't punishment, it was survival. I poured my energy into something Grandma would have loved. Using a portion of the trust, I founded the Karen Financial Empowerment Fund, a nonprofit teaching young adults in Seattle about budgeting, saving, and spotting financial manipulation. I built workshops blending practical tips like dividing income like Grandma's sandwiches with emotional tools to set boundaries drawing from my own scars. Watching students light up as they opened their first savings accounts or said no to toxic requests felt like channeling her spirit. A year after that Tacoma showdown, I stood in my condo watching ferries glide across Puget Sound and realized I'd found peace. The trust secured my future housing retirement, even a dream trip to Europe I'd planned with Grandma's encouragement. But more than money, it gave me freedom from a cycle that could have drained me dry. I learned family isn't defined by who shares your blood, but by who respects your worth. Grandma taught me that, and I live it every day. To anyone watching who's tangled in similar family pressures, know this setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's strength. Financial manipulation is real, and it often hides behind family loyalty. Look for the signs, guilt trips, favoritism demands without discussion. Protect your peace even if it means walking away. That's what I did, and it's why I'm standing here whole and unapologetic. I've shared my story to honor Grandma Karen and to warn others that love doesn't mean giving up everything. It's about balance, caring for others without losing yourself. My journey showed me that true family lifts you up, not pulls you down. If you've faced something like this, what helped you hold your ground? Share below. I'm reading every comment. Thank you for listening to my story. It means the world to know you're out there. Please subscribe to hear more real stories like this, and let me know your thoughts. Your support keeps this going.